Hello, everybody. This is Joe Joseph, and this is your Daily Sheeple Daily News Update. And I've got some whoppers for you today. I want to start out with a story by RT, and this came to me last night via Facebook. A lot of people were talking about the fact that Assange may have been assassinated. I don't think that's the case at all, but what did happen was his internet was cut off. Interestingly enough, there was two major things that happened over in the UK last night and into today. And that had to do with Russia specifically on one, the second one dealing with Assange. The Russians, RT's bank accounts were frozen over in the UK. Isn't that interesting? There's a full-out assault right now going on Russia by the West in an attempt to vilify them over what? Getting the truth out? I mean, how often have we seen American propaganda machines go over into foreign countries and broadcast propaganda, and it doesn't get shut down, you know, because these countries really don't have the means to do so. Yet, when the same thing happens to the United States, like Russia Today, who comes over and gives people the straight skinny because the mainstream media might not be giving it to them, then, well, they throw a hissy fit and they start shutting things down. Well, this is no different. The UK went and shut and froze RT's bank accounts over in the UK. Very interesting. But even more interesting than that was what they did to Julian Assange. And according to RT, Assange's internet link was intentionally severed by a state party, according to WikiLeaks. There was a tweet that went out at about 1:33 a.m. on the 17th that said, Julian Assange's internet link has been intentionally severed by a state party. We have activated the appropriate contingency plans. Now, RT's reporting that WikiLeaks' contingency plans have been activated after its co-founder's internet service was intentionally cut. The internet is one of the few, if not only, available ways for Julian Assange, who's been locked up in the Ecuadorian embassy in London for more than 4 years, to maintain contact with the outside world, and facing extradition to Sweden over alleged rape allegations, which he denies. The Australian computer programmer has been holed up in that embassy in West London since 2012. He claims the extradition is actually a bid to move him to a jurisdiction where he can be sent to the U.S. And U.S., of course, would love to get their hands on him, just like they would like to get their hands on Edward Snowden for the revelations that came out. Look, folks, I mean, it is, if it's not 100% evident now to everybody that the United States and its government is 100% corrupt. And that doesn't mean that everybody within government is corrupt. You know, a lot of your GS level civil servants just want to go do their jobs and come home every day. But the key decision makers within government, everything is corrupt. Everybody's bought and paid for. They're on the take. And this is no different. This has some serious implications as far as, you know, a state's ability to be able to restrict the free speech of somebody and to cut off their lifeline. And if you think that this is going to be the end of it, oh, this is just the start. So apparently the contingency plan is to send out these keys that will unleash a whole multitude of emails. God only knows, and other files. God only knows what's in them. Wouldn't it be nice to have some 9/11 emails come out or some documentation come out that says, hey, look, this is who really done it. And that may be in that dump file. We don't know. But we do know that it was enough of an insurance policy for Assange to be able to keep it in his hip pocket. You got to wonder, though, what's going to happen as time goes on and as these leaks continue to happen. You know, how far is the Western power, the globalists, how far are they willing to go to stop this leak? And it seems like they're taking the next step. But I find it interesting because the Daily Sheeple, Melissa Dykes, is reporting that in some of these FBI files that were released, Now, this isn't WikiLeaks. This is the FBI releasing some of the emails that were turned over to them by the Clinton administration, by the Clinton email server scandal. It says Clinton's FBI files literally mention the shadow government at the State Department. Isn't that interesting? She writes, Bill Clinton once reportedly told a senior White House reporter, Sarah McClendon, quote, Sarah, there's a government inside the government, and I don't know how to control it, and I don't control it. Now, average citizens who talk about anything like that are typically referred to as conspiracy theorists, as if that's a pejorative term. Think about that. How many times are you vilified and called a conspiracy theorist, right? She continues, she says, then again, how much of a conspiracy is it when the FBI's own documents confirm the existence of something referred to as a shadow government? It's crazy. Page 56 of the FBI file in this Clinton investigation says it explicitly. And you can check it out. It's making the rounds right now on Reddit. And a powerful group of high-ranking state officials referred to it as the shadow government. I mean, this is literally in the emails. So Skull and Bones John Kerry sitting over there in a group literally nicknamed the shadow government, which decides what information will be released to the public and what will be censored in regards to fellow high-ranking elitist Hillary Clinton. You know, it's almost a laughable cliche, she writes, except there it is in black and white. And still, there are people in this country who claim there's no such thing as a cover-up. And it's all a conspiracy. That Hillary Clinton, yeah, she's just being attacked because she's a woman. Look, it really does boil down to two very distinct things. You have good and you have evil. Whether or not, you've got a bunch of noise in there and they try to divide it up 50,000 different ways to confuse you. But if you want to simplify it, it's like breaking down fractions to the lowest common denominator. And in this case, there's two. Good and evil. And you judge people based on their merits, based on their actions. And you tell me whether or not the Clintons are good or evil. If you can answer that honestly, I think you know the answer. And of course, they were pivotal in removing Muammar Gaddafi from power, and that's why Libya went to hell in a handbasket. Again, that's not to say that Gaddafi was a saint. I mean, he ruled Libya under a military tribalist rule. I don't understand it because I'm not tribal. I only understand the Western governments, and I understand dictatorships and whatnot, but I don't understand what was going on in Libya when Gaddafi ruled. I know what his Green Book says, but I can tell you the people of Libya, they miss Gaddafi, and they miss life under him. This according to France 24. They say that 5 years after an uprising killed Muammar Gaddafi, residents in the chaos-racked country's capital joke that they've grown to miss the longtime dictator as the frustrations of daily life mount. Yeah, I'm sure it does. When you've got war going on all around you, when you've got power cuts and you've got price hikes and a lack of cash flow, yeah, I'm thinking you might miss the fact that when he was in power, he paid for the electricity. The government of Libya paid the electric bill. They paid for half of your mortgage. If you had to get a loan, there was no interest. They sent you to school anywhere you wanted in the world. They brought water to the desert. People there saying that we have to wait hours outside banks to beg cashiers to give us some of our own money. And then when we do get it, everything's 3 times more expensive. Sounds pretty good, doesn't it? Boy, us Americans, and whether or not you choose to accept it, we are complicit in those crimes because our non-representing representatives and the bureaucrats and the shadow government that rules this country has done this in our name and has caused strife and heartache and suffering in our name. And that's not just to Libya. That's to many countries over the course of time, most since World War II. And we just sit back and we're worried about the circus that's going on here with this election, as if that's going to solve any of our problems. And it's not. And I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why. Because there was a poll, and this is a very telling poll, that CBS did, and this is according to MarketWatch.com. Actually, the poll was done by YouGov. And it's pretty telling how it's being spun. Here it says millennials desperately need to bone up on the history of communism. And what they're doing is they're framing this argument to say that they don't know what communism is because we live in America. That's basically what they're saying. It says the Victims of Communism Memorial Foundation, citing survey results released on Monday, blames widespread ignorance for the relatively positive views millennials have towards socialism and communism. It says over 2,300 Americans polled by YouGov, 80% of baby boomers and 91% of the elderly agree with the statement that communism was and still is a problem in the world today. Millennials, only 55%. Stop there. As if it's not happening here in this country. That's the problem. They're spinning it for you to think that what you have here is not communist. What you have is a banana republic. That's what we have. Oh, yeah, well, we have a constitutional republic. No, we don't. We had one. We've given it all away. Oh, you think Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump's going to save that, right? Well, I'm going to prove it to you now. Karl Marx was the commonly referred to as the father of communism. He wrote the Communist Manifesto. Well, in the Communist Manifesto, there are 10 planks, 10 goals. Now, most of these came from Adam Weishaupt, circa 1776. Adam Weishaupt was entrusted by Mayor Amschel Rothschild to come up with goals of his new organization called the Illuminati. Karl Marx was very attuned and into a lot of Weishaupt's teachings. So you can see the influence in the Communist Manifesto, especially the 10 planks. But I'm going to go over the 10 planks now, and then we'll see how many of them are here and firmly in place in the United States. Plank number 1, abolition of private property in land and application of all rents of land to public purpose. And I'm using laissezfairerepublic.com as a great source. They have a great source of information with regards to the Communist Manifesto and the 10 planks. They say the courts have interpreted the 14th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution in 1868 to give the government far more eminent domain power than was originally intended. Under the rubric of eminent domain and various zoning regulations, land use regulations by the Bureau of Land Management, property taxes, and environmental excuses, private property rights have become very diluted, and private property in land and vehicles and other forms are seized almost every day in this country under forfeitures and their provisions of the RICO statute and the so-called war on drugs. They're not supposed to be able to do that. If you're behind on taxes, what happens? They come and they seize your property. It's public now. See, that's not supposed to happen. So plank number 1, here in America. Plank number 2, a heavy progressive or graduated income tax. The 16th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, 1913, which some scholars, of course, maintain have never been truly ratified. And various state income taxes established this major Marxist coup in the United States many decades ago. These taxes continue to drain the lifeblood out of the American economy and greatly reduce the accumulation of desperately needed capital for future growth, business starts, job creation, and salary increases. The dollar is worth 2% of what it was in 1913. 2%. Plank number 2. It's here. Plank 3. Abolition of all rights of inheritance. Another Marxian attack on private property rights is in the form of federal and state estate taxes and other inheritance taxes, which have abolished or at least greatly reduced the right of private property owners to determine the disposition and distribution of their estates upon their death. Instead, government bureaucrats get their greedy hands involved. I know Hillary Clinton's talking about raising the inheritance tax to 55%. More than half. Yeah, because they know what's right for you and what to do with your money. Plank number 3, here in the United States. Plank 4, confiscation of the property of all immigrants and rebels. We call it government seizures, tax liens, forfeitures. This is a forfeiture public law, 99-570. This was in 1986. You've got Executive Order 11490, Sections 1205 and 2002, which give private land to the Department of Urban Development and the imprisonment of terrorists and those who speak out or write against the government in the 1997 Crime and Terrorist Bill, or you have the IRS confiscation of property without due process. Plank number 4. It's here. Plank 5. Centralization of credit in the hands of the state by means of a national bank with state capital and an exclusive monopoly. Of course, we have the Federal Reserve System here. That was created in 1913. It's a national bank, and it politically manipulates interest rates and holds a monopoly on legal counterfeiting in the United States. This is exactly what Marx had in mind, and it completely fulfills this plank. You know, plank 5. It's here. Plank 6, centralization of the means of communication and transportation in the hands of the state. In the U.S., communication and transportation are controlled and regulated by the FCC, the Federal Communication Commission, established by the Communications Act of 1934, and the Department of Transportation and the Interstate Commerce Commission, established by Congress in 1887. We have the FAA, the Federal Aviation Administration, as well as Executive Orders 11490 and 10999, not to mention various state bureaucracies and regulations. And there's also a postal monopoly. You've got Amtrak and Conrail, which is outright socialist government-owned enterprises. And instead of a free market private enterprise in these important industries, these fields in America are semi-cartel. You got cartels that through government that regulate this. That's what you have. You know, they talk about regulating the internet and political speech. That's what you have. Why? Because communications are regulated. Plank 6. It's here. Plank 7. Extension of factories and instruments of production owned by the state. The bringing into cultivation of wastelands and the improvement of the soil, generally in acceptance and accordance with a common plan. Now, while the U.S. doesn't have vast collective farms, which failed miserably in the Soviet Union, by the way, we nevertheless have a significant degree of government involvement in agriculture in the form of price support subsidies and acreage allotments and land use controls. The Desert Entry Act and the Department of Agriculture, as well as the Department of Commerce and the Labor Department, the Department of Interior, the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, and the BLM, Bureau of Land Management, they're all in cahoots as far as controlling land usage. Plank 7 is here. You may not have big farms. We've got mega farms who, through special interest, fund their bubbas in the government so that they can do certain things. But you have Plank 7 here. Plank 8, equal obligation of all to work. Establishment of industrial armies, especially for agriculture. Now, we call it the Social Security Administration and the Department of Labor. The national debt and inflation caused by the communal bank has caused the needs for a two-income family, women in the workplace since the 1920s, and the 19th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, the Civil Rights Act of 1964, assorted socialist unions, affirmative action, the Federal Public Works Program, and, of course, Executive Order 11,000, and the Equal Rights Amendment means that women should do all work that men do including the military, and since passage, it would make women subject to the draft. Everybody can work. There's an equal obligation. Plank number 9. Combination of agriculture and manufacturing industries. Gradual abolition of the distinction between town and country by a more equitable distribution of the population over the country. Now, we call it the Planning Reorganization Act of 1949, or better known as zoning and supercorporate farms. And then you have Executive Orders 11647 and 11731, and you also have Public Law 89-136 that divvy up the land and dictate its usage. Yeah, oh boy. And finally, we have Plank 10, free education for all children in government schools, abolition of children factory labor in its present form, combination of education and industrial production. Now, people are being taxed to support what we call public schools, which train the young to be good workers, to be good drones, for the communal debt system that's in place. You know, we also have the Department of Education. We've got the National Education Administration and outcome-based education. So I have to ask everybody, do we live in a free country? Is there a reason why millennials may be confused that socialism is good? Perhaps it's what they've been experiencing, what they've been subjected to. And shame on people that don't expose this for what it is. But I got to tell you, it's been in place for a while now. So a lot of people just may not know any different. But this is the truth, folks. The truth is we don't live in a free country. People don't know what freedom is all about. And until we recapture, until we kindle that flame again, we're not going to make any change for the better. It's only going to get worse. I'm Joe Joseph. This was your daily news update brought to you by thedailysheeple.com. Subscribe to this YouTube channel today, and I'll see you all tomorrow. Have a good day, everybody.